Okay, so this whole mess started about 3 years ago. I'm Lauren, 24 now, but back then I was 21, juggling college classes and a part-time gig at a little bookstore in Portland. That's where I met Ethan. He was 28, working there too, mostly to chip away at his mountain of credit card debt. He'd racked it up trying to keep his head above water after his folks lost everything to some shady investment scheme. They couldn't help him out, and he was basically on his own. We hit it off pretty quick. It started with us complaining about our crazy families over lukewarm coffee during breaks. My parents were control freaks who wouldn't let me move out unless I had a real plan. And his were a mess of broken promises and bad decisions. But soon, it wasn't just griping. We actually liked hanging out. Ethan had this dry humor that cracked me up, and I guess I was the optimistic one who kept him from spiraling. After a year of late-night talks and sneaking into movies we couldn't afford, we started dating. Fast forward to when I graduated. I'd saved up enough from the bookstore and some freelance graphic design gigs to get my own place. A tiny apartment in Seattle, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Ethan, though? He was still drowning in debt, stuck living in his parents' basement in Tacoma. I felt bad for him, you know. He was working hard, but it was like quicksand. The more he tried, the deeper he sank. So, I offered him a lifeline. Move in with me. The catch was, he couldn't afford half the rent, not even close. I told him I'd cover 70% if he could scrape together the other 30%. He jumped at it, promising he'd pay me back someday. Spoiler. That day never came. We settled into this routine. I'd landed a remote job designing ads for a tech startup. Decent pay, flexible hours. As long as I hit my deadlines, my boss didn't care where I worked from. Ethan, on the other hand, got a job at a warehouse downtown. It was grueling. Long shifts, heavy lifting, no breaks. He'd come home wiped out, and I got it. I didn't mind picking up the slack around the apartment. I'd cook dinner, wash dishes, fold laundry, sweep the floors, all of it. The only thing I asked him to do was take the recycling out since he always finished eating last. It was one tiny job. Guess how many times he forgot? Every single time. At first, I brushed it off. He's tired, I'd tell myself. But then there was this one weekend that changed everything. I'd been away for a work thing, an in-person meeting in Bellevue that ran late. I got home Saturday night, exhausted, dreaming of crashing on the couch. Instead, I walked into a war zone. The kitchen sink was overflowing with crusty plates. Takeout containers were spilling off the counter, and the recycling bin, stuffed to the brim with beer cans and pizza boxes. The living room looked like a tornado hit it. Blankets everywhere, socks on the floor, you name it. I was livid. After a 12-hour day, I spent 3 hours cleaning up, hoping Ethan would notice when he got back from his shift. He didn't. He walked in, gave me a quick, "Hey, babe," and plopped down with his phone to scroll TikTok. Not a word about the sparkling apartment. I lost it. Tears just poured out. Exhaustion, frustration, all of it hitting at once. He looked over, confused, and asked, "You okay?" I mumbled something about being tired and reminded him, again, to take out the recycling before bed. He nodded. But the next morning? Yep, still there. That was the breaking point. So, that morning after I found the recycling still sitting there, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, asking if I'd made coffee yet. I slammed the cabinet door shut and turned to him. "No, Ethan, I didn't make coffee. You can do it yourself for once." He blinked at me like I'd grown a second head and mumbled, "Whoa, why are you being so snappy?" That's when I let it all out. I yelled about how useless he was around the apartment, how I was cooking, cleaning, paying most of the rent, and the one thing I asked him to do he couldn't even manage. He just stared at me, then said, "You're overreacting, Lauren." I forgot, okay? It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I took a deep breath and asked, "What do you do around here, besides crash on the couch with a beer every night?" He rolled his eyes and said he was exhausted from work, that he deserved to unwind. I didn't disagree. He did work hard. But then I asked, "What about me?" I work too, Ethan. I come home, cook for us, wash your dishes, iron your stupid warehouse shirts, and all I get is a full recycling bin every morning. That's when he hit me with something I'll never forget. He leaned back, arms crossed, and said, "I never asked you to do any of that. My mom always took care of stuff for my dad. It's just how it works. I figured you'd get that, being my girlfriend and all." I was floored. Did he seriously just say that? I shot back, "I'm not your mom, Ethan. We're supposed to be partners, equals. I've been busting my ass for us, and you don't even notice." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. So I laid it out. From now on, you cook your own food, do your own laundry, take out your own trash, and clean up after yourself. Oh, and you're paying 50% of the rent, or you're out. He looked like I'd slapped him. "Where's this coming from?" he stammered. I told him I was done feeling like his maid and his ATM, done being unappreciated. He tried to protest, saying he couldn't afford half the rent, but I cut him off. "Figure it out or leave. I'm not negotiating." Then I grabbed my keys and stormed out to cool off. I was already late for a Zoom meeting anyway. When I got back that night, I stuck to my guns. I only cleaned my own dishes, left his dirty clothes in a pile, and didn't touch the recycling. It was petty, sure, but it felt good. Ethan didn't take it seriously at first. He let the trash pile up, hoping I'd cave. Nope. I started ordering takeout for myself and tossing the containers so I didn't have to deal with the kitchen sink, which was starting to smell like a dumpster. He'd grumble, "You're supposed to be my partner, Lauren." But I'd just shrug and say, "Partners pull their weight." Rent day rolled around, and I paid my 50% to our landlord, texting her that Ethan would cover the rest. He flipped out when he saw the email, banging on my bedroom door, yelling that I was screwing him over, and I should stick to the old 70-30 split. I opened the door just enough to say, "You never appreciated it when I did, so why should I keep carrying you?" He tried to guilt trip me, saying he'd been counting on me to help him through his debt, but I shut it down. He sulked, but eventually coughed up his share, barely. Things got worse from there. He never apologized, not once. No, "Hey, you were right," or "I'm sorry for taking you for granted." Instead, he'd snap at me over dumb stuff, like how I wasn't supportive anymore. I got a big freelance project that boosted my income, and he found out through a coworker friend of ours, Mia. That's when the real blowout happened. One night, he came home late, reeking of cheap whiskey. He shook me awake at like 2 a.m., slurring that he needed to talk. I groaned, told him it could wait, but he kept poking me until I sat up, bleary-eyed and pissed. That's when he dropped the bomb. "I met someone at work, Lauren. Her name's Chloe. She's 23, gorgeous, and her dad owns half the waterfront properties in Seattle. I think I'm falling for her." I just stared at him, numb. He rambled on about how she was better than me, how she got him in ways I never did. I should have been crushed, right? But honestly, I didn't care anymore. We'd been more like roommates than a couple for months. I cut him off mid-sentence. "Ethan, I don't care, good for you. Let's just break up and you can move out whenever." His face twisted, like he'd expected me to beg him to stay. "What? You jealous?" he sneered. I laughed, actually laughed, and said, "No, I'm relieved. I don't feel guilty ending this now." That set him off. He started shouting about how I'd changed, how my fancy job made me think I was better than him, how Chloe was a real woman who wanted a family, not a career. I stayed calm, told him if that's what he wanted, he should go for it. "Just pack your stuff and get out by the end of the month." He stormed off, muttering about modern women ruining everything. I went back to sleep, feeling lighter than I had in years. After that drunken 2 a.m. confession, things moved fast. Ethan started packing the next day, grumbling the whole time, of course. I'd come home from work to find him shoving clothes into duffel bags, leaving random junk like half-empty shampoo bottles and crumpled receipts all over the apartment. I didn't care. I just wanted him gone. The last night he was there, I got back from a grocery run and froze in the doorway. There he was, sprawled on my couch with Chloe. Yep, the rich girl from his warehouse job, giggling next to him like they owned the place. I stood there, arms full of bags, staring at them. Ethan smirked and said, "Oh, hey, Lauren. Since it's my last night, I figured I'd show Chloe where I've been slumming it." Slumming it? This was my apartment, the one I'd busted my ass to keep afloat while he mooched off me. I wanted to scream, but Chloe was there, and I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose it. So I forced a smile, said, "Hi, Chloe." "Nice to meet you," and headed to the kitchen to unpack. She barely glanced at me, just gave this little huff and flipped her hair like I was the help. While I was heating up some leftovers, Chloe sauntered in for a glass of water. She leaned against the counter, watching me with this smug look that made my skin crawl. I asked, "Need something?" She smirked and said, "No, just curious what Ethan saw in you." Then she walked off without another word. I gripped the spatula so hard I thought it'd snap, but I kept my cool and ate in my room to avoid them. Later, as I was heading downstairs to grab my charger, I overheard them talking. Chloe giggled, "You're so lucky you upgraded, Ethan. I mean, look at this place. And her." Ethan laughed and said, "Yeah, Lauren was just a stepping stone. She was so naive, paying for everything. Saved me a ton, though." My stomach dropped. I'd always suspected he'd taken advantage of me, but hearing it out loud? It was like a punch to the gut. Chloe asked, "Why'd you even date her?" And he said, "Easy." She was a pushover, paid for dates, rent, you name it. I knew she'd never say no. They kept going, ripping me apart like it was a game. I slipped back upstairs, locked my door, and cried into my pillow until I couldn't anymore. I felt humiliated, used, and so stupid for not seeing it sooner. The next morning, they were gone. Ethan had taken the last of his stuff, well, except for a single sock I found under the couch later, and I finally had my place to myself. I spent the whole day cleaning, scrubbing every trace of him out of my life. By the end, I was exhausted, but free. I danced around the living room to my favorite playlist, feeling like I'd dodged a bullet. For the next few months, I thrived. Work was great. I got a raise after that big freelance project, and I started treating myself to little things like new plants and a better coffee maker. Ethan was a distant memory until about 2 months ago. Mia, our mutual friend from the bookstore days, dropped by my office one day with news. Ethan was engaged to Chloe. She showed me their Instagram pics, fancy rooftop poses, Chloe flashing a diamond the size of a grape. I felt a twinge of something, anger maybe, but mostly relief that he was someone else's problem now. That night, I got home and checked my mailbox. There it was, a cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. An invitation to Ethan and Chloe's engagement party at some swanky venue in downtown Seattle. I figured it was a mistake. Why would he invite me? Until I opened it. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from Ethan. "Lauren, you should come see the life I'm building with Chloe. It's everything you could never give me." My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't a courtesy invite. He wanted to rub his success in my face, to show off his rich fiancée and their perfect little world. All those years I'd carried him, and this was his thank you? A taunt? I sat there fuming, letting every ounce of resentment bubble up. Then it hit me. I wasn't going to let him win. I grabbed the RSVP card, checked yes with a +1, and started plotting. If Ethan wanted a show, I'd give him one he'd never forget. I pulled out my laptop and dug into Chloe's Instagram. Every post, every caption, looking for ammo. That's when I struck gold. 6 months ago, she'd broken up with her ex, Ryan. Tons of pics of them together. High school sweethearts, prom dates, the works. They'd been serious. I sent Ryan a friend request, and when he accepted, I messaged him. "Hey Ryan, I'm Lauren, Ethan's ex. I've got a wild idea. How do you feel about being my +1 to his engagement party with Chloe?" He replied almost instantly, "Wait, what? Why me?" I laid it all out. Ethan's note, how he'd used me, how I just wanted to shake things up. Ryan was quiet for a bit, then said, "Give me a day to think about it." Over the next week, we texted nonstop. He opened up about Chloe, how she'd cheated on him with a coworker, guess who, how she'd dumped him when her dad pushed her to trade up. He was still raw about it, maybe even a little hung up on her. When I told him how Ethan had played me, he got it. "Let's do it," he finally said. "I want to see their faces too." The night of Ethan and Chloe's engagement party rolled around faster than I expected. I spent hours getting ready, not to impress anyone, but to feel unstoppable. I wore this sleek black dress I'd splurged on after my raise, paired with heels that clicked like a warning shot. Ryan met me outside my place, looking sharp in a blazer and jeans. He grinned and said, "Ready to stir the pot?" I laughed. "Oh, you have no idea." We drove to the venue, a rooftop bar overlooking the Seattle skyline, all string lights and overpriced cocktails. The second we walked in, I spotted Ethan near the bar, schmoozing with some of Chloe's fancy friends. His eyes locked on mine, then flicked to Ryan. His smug little smile vanished. He recognized Ryan instantly. I mean, how could he not? Chloe had plastered her ex all over social media for years. Ethan marched over, trying to keep his voice low, and hissed, "What the hell, Lauren? Why'd you bring him?" I just smiled, all sugar and spice, and said, "You invited me to see your big night, Ethan." I figured I'd bring a friend. He couldn't argue, not with a room full of people watching, so he stormed off, glaring daggers. Ryan and I found our table, playing it cool. The party was in full swing, champagne flowing, a live band crooning something jazzy. Chloe made her grand entrance about 20 minutes later, gliding in on her dad's arm like she was walking a red carpet. She looked flawless, long blonde hair cascading over a shimmery gold dress that probably cost more than my rent. Everyone stood to clap, and I'll admit, she owned the room. She hadn't noticed us yet, too busy soaking up the attention. Then it happened. Chloe turned to wave at someone, and her gaze landed on Ryan. She froze mid-step, her perfect smile faltering. Her eyes darted to me, then back to him, like she couldn't process it. I gave her a little wave and said, "Congrats, Chloe. Beautiful party." Her face tightened, and she marched over, heels clicking furiously. "What are you doing here with him?" she snapped, loud enough that a few heads turned. I kept my tone light. "Oh, Ryan's my +1. We're just here to celebrate you and Ethan." She glared at Ryan and asked, "Are you two dating now or something?" Ryan didn't even flinch. He just shrugged, which made her cheeks flush red. Before she could say more, Ryan stood up and said, "Chloe, can we talk? Privately?" She hesitated, then nodded, shooting me a look that could have melted steel. They stepped out to the balcony, and I caught Ethan watching from across the room, his jaw clenched. He didn't move. Couldn't, really, with all the guests around. But I could tell he was rattled. I sipped my drink and waited, pretending to enjoy the hors d'oeuvres. The party rolled on, people dancing, toasting, laughing, but Chloe and Ryan didn't come back. 10 minutes turned into 30, then an hour. Guests started whispering, craning their necks toward the balcony doors. Chloe's dad, this big-shot real estate guy in a tailored suit, looked irritated and sent one of her bridesmaids, some girl in a pink dress, to check on her. The bridesmaid came sprinting back a minute later, holding a crumpled napkin with scribbled handwriting. She waved it in the air and shouted, Everyone?" "Chloe's gone." The room went dead silent. The bridesmaid kept going, voice shaking. She left a note. Says she's sorry, but seeing Ryan made her realize she's still in love with him. She's not engaged to Ethan anymore. She's leaving with Ryan. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan stood there, glass in hand, looking like someone had just yanked the floor out from under him. Chloe's dad snatched the napkin, read it, and turned beet red. Her mom started crying into a handkerchief, while the guests murmured in shock. I'll be honest, I was stunned too. My plan was to rattle Ethan, maybe make him squirm a little. I never thought Ryan showing up would make Chloe ditch her own engagement party and run off with him. Ethan's eyes met mine across the room, and for a split second, I thought he might charge at me. Instead, he just slumped into a chair, staring at nothing while Chloe's parents ushered everyone out, apologizing over and over. "Please enjoy the rest of your night elsewhere," her dad said through gritted teeth. I grabbed my purse and slipped out before Ethan could corner me. Driving home, I felt this weird mix of guilt and triumph. Ethan had wanted to humiliate me, to parade his shiny new life in my face, and instead he'd ended up the one humiliated. I didn't feel bad for him, not after everything, but I couldn't shake the thought that I'd accidentally set off a bomb. Had Ryan planned this? What had he said to her out there? I texted him when I got home. What just happened? No reply yet. I went to bed, head spinning, wondering how this would play out. Okay, so it's been a wild ride since that engagement party imploded, and I owe you all some updates. Buckle up. Update 1. The aftermath. The morning after Chloe ran off with Ryan, my phone was blowing up. Ethan had left me 6 voicemails, each one angrier than the last, calling me every name in the book and blaming me for ruining his life. I didn't listen past the first one, just deleted them and blocked his number. Then, Mia texted me a screenshot from Chloe's Instagram, a blurry pic of her and Ryan on a ferry, captioned, "Starting over." Guess they didn't waste any time. I still hadn't heard back from Ryan, so I was in the dark about what went down on that balcony. Did he convince her to leave? Was this his plan all along? I had no clue. A few days later, Ethan showed up at my apartment. It was a Sunday. I was in sweats, halfway through a Netflix binge, when someone started pounding on my door. I peeked through the peephole and saw him, red-faced and pacing. I yelled, "Go away, Ethan!" But he kept banging, shouting, "We need to talk. You owe me that much." Owe him? After everything? I cracked the door, just enough to see him, and said, "You're not coming in. Say what you want and leave." He launched into this rant about how I'd sabotaged his future. Apparently, he'd quit his warehouse job, banking on Chloe's family money to coast through life. Now he was jobless, broke, and, his words, screwed because of you. I'd had enough. I cut him off and said, "I heard you and Chloe that night at my place, Ethan. You called me a stepping stone, laughed about using me for years. You don't get to play victim now." His eyes bugged out. He clearly didn't know I'd overheard that. I kept going. "I paid your way, cleaned up after you, and you repaid me by cheating and flaunting it. I didn't make Chloe leave. That's on her. So take your pity party somewhere else." He sputtered, "You were too naive to see it back then. That's not my fault." I laughed in his face, told him to grow up, and slammed the door. He yelled for a bit longer, but when I pulled out my phone to call the cops, he bolted. Good riddance. Update 2. Ryan's side of the story. About a week later, Ryan finally texted me back, a long message that cleared up a lot. He thanked me for bringing him to the party, saying it changed everything. Apparently, when he and Chloe talked on the balcony, she broke down crying, admitting she'd never gotten over him. Ryan said he'd been honest with her, told her he was still hurt from her cheating, with Ethan no less. But he couldn't deny he still loved her too. They talked for over an hour, and by the end, Chloe decided she couldn't go through with the engagement. They snuck out. She scribbled that napkin note, and they hopped a ferry to Victoria for an impromptu getaway. Her treat, since she'd already booked it as her honeymoon with Ethan. Ryan said they'd talked to her parents, who were pissed at first, but came around after Chloe promised to figure things out. He ended the text saying he'd be back in Seattle soon and wanted to meet up to explain in person. I was glad they were happy, I guess, but still a little weirded out that my petty revenge snowballed into this. Update 3. The meetup and moving on, fast forward a couple weeks, I met Ryan for coffee at this quirky little spot near Pike Place Market. I was halfway through my latte when he walked in, with Chloe. I braced myself, expecting drama, but she smiled, actually smiled and said, "Lauren, I'm so sorry for how I treated you." I blinked, totally thrown off. Ryan nodded and said, "She insisted on coming to apologize." Chloe sat down and spilled everything. She told me Ethan had been chasing her at work for months, flirting, complaining about me, painting himself as this misunderstood guy trapped in a bad relationship. She'd been flattered, especially when she and Ryan were fighting. "He made me feel like I was saving him," she said, "but I was wrong about you." She admitted she'd been jealous of me that night at my apartment, how I didn't need anyone to prop me up. I was a jerk, and I'm sorry. I told her I got it. Ethan had a way of twisting things. I shared how he'd used me too, and we ended up bonding over what a leech he'd been. Then she explained the party. Seeing Ryan hit her like a freight train, she realized she'd thrown away something real for a fantasy with Ethan. When they talked, all those feelings rushed back, and she couldn't fake it anymore. They were together now, taking it slow, and she was filing to annul whatever legal mess she'd started with Ethan. We finished our coffee, laughed a little, and parted ways. I haven't talked to them since. Don't really plan to, but it felt good to close that chapter. As for Ethan, no idea what he's up to, and I don't care. I heard through Mia he's crashing with a buddy in Tacoma, scrambling for a new job. I hope he learns something from this, but I'm not holding my breath. Me? I'm loving my solo life, new locks on my door, a security camera just in case, and a promotion at work that's keeping me busy. Ethan wanted to show me up, but all he did was show me how much better off I am without him. Karma's funny like that.